Media. Media is a huge religious topic, so we'll only show you one example of a challenge created by the digital age. Now, the world knows that burning a Quran offends Muslims. Enraged crowds gather, governments complain, sometimes deaths occur. How could this be? Well, let's firstly show you what doesn't happen. Here's the Quran on a smartphone. What would happen if I deleted that? Would that create an international incident? No, it wouldn't. And I'm not being provocative here, by the way. I'm simply demonstrating a media conundrum. And it goes further on the smartphone. The maker of the app might alert me to an update. If I were to download that update, it wouldn't change the words in the Quran, but it would overwrite, i.e. destroy the existing Quran. So the supplier is culpable too in giving me an update. Now let's trace the media steps leading to this quandary, and they go a long way back to the original tablet, which wasn't an iPad, it was clay. People drew objects on these clay tablets that they would trade in. Pictures didn't become words first, oh no, they became numbers, and not decimal either. However, descriptions became necessary to write 5 sheep rather than 5 cows. So those ancient languages like Hebrew are actually a mixture of words and numbers. That might seem clever, but the real innovation was separating words out from numbers. This was an important step because virtually all languages ended up dropping their unique number system and adopting decimal, which is another story, so let's get back to words. Messages were etched on these cumbersome tablets and carried around. Not long messages though, the tablets were too heavy. A good one could handle 10 commandments. Now the Egyptians then found papyrus, and that was much lighter, and it meant you could write more down on them. And eventually scrolls were developed. You could write a lot on a scroll, and then you could carry a memory around. However, not everyone thought this was a good idea. Certainly not Plato, who relates his complaint in a legend about a king answering the inventor of the book. And he says, "If men learn this, it will implant forgetfulness in their souls. They will cease to exercise memory because they rely on that which is written, calling things to remembrance no longer from within themselves, but by means of external marks. What you have discovered is a recipe not for memory, but for reminder. And it is no true wisdom that you offer your disciples, but only its semblance. For by telling them of many things without teaching them, you'll make them seem to know much, while for the most part they know nothing. And as men filled not with wisdom, but with the conceit of wisdom, they will be a burden to their fellows." That's about 500 years before Jesus. And writing was still questionable during his era if the Apostle Paul can be believed. He wrote, "For the letter kills, but the spirit gives life." Shortly after Jesus and Paul, scrolls were superseded by an actual book with pages called a Codex. You could include a lot of knowledge in a Codex, many times the capacity of a scroll. But they were still handwritten, and it took a long time to copy one out neatly and correctly. As the centuries passed, people forgot Plato's warnings, and by the 6th century we find icons of Jesus holding a book, an item that didn't even exist when he walked this earth. Bad books were burnt to eradicate evil memories, but the Bible was divinized. It was fused to Jesus and all that artwork, and the most powerful city in the world, Constantinople, that happened to be relatively close to Arabia. So when Muhammad received his visions 100 years later, several media layers had been put in place. Firstly, words and sentences could be written down. Secondly, they could be stored in a book, although that took a lot of effort. And thirdly, the nearby greatest religion known to him had a book that looked like it was divine. Is it any surprise that his book was put together only 10 years after he passed away, whereas the Christian Bible took hundreds to formalize? And given the example to the west of Arabia and the difficulty in reproducing it, that to burn his book was deemed evil, because after all that competing religion in the west also burnt books that were evil or heretical and painted the Son of God holding the divinized one, the Bible. A road bump occurred in the 16th century when the printing press was introduced to the Muslims, but they fended off this simpler way of duplicating their book for nearly 200 years. Fast forward to today and we can burn a digital book without a thought. The challenge of replication has gone. There is no cost in duplicating any digital book. Will this penny ever drop? Again, history has a lesson. Eventually, the Ottoman rulers of the Muslim Empire realised they needed the printing press, and it moved from being evil to good. Any religious objections have faded away over time because the duplication ability outweighed the evil of a machine churning out the words of Allah rather than a human being copying them. Although predicting the future is difficult, one might guess that removing the Quran from the smartphone will not cause an angry crowd to gather. A fatwa or religious ruling will not be issued, and instead the problem just might slip quietly away. Watch the video on memory to see how that might happen.